Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to My Favorite Mistake. I'm Mark Raven. Our guest today is Jazzy Collins. She is a casting director. She holds the honor of being the first Black two-time Emmy nominee in the Outstanding Reality Casting category. So Jazzy has worked for hit reality shows, including Lizzo's Watch Out for the Big Girls, The Circle, The Traitors, The Bachelor, and The Bachelorette, Family or Fiancé, and Love Island. So beyond that work, Jazzy has been at the forefront of the movement calling for diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry. And she's been featured or published in publications including Deadline, E! News, ET Canada, Women's Health, and more. So with that, Jazzy, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have this conversation of the different shows that you've been a part of. As people might remember, I had a previous guest, Zach Waddell, in episode 214, who was a contestant on The Bachelorette. And I guess is that the right word to say, contestant, or?
Yeah, contested. Yeah, that's correct.
So we talked a little bit about that. We might get, well, I know we'll get to hear Jazzy's perspectives on what goes on behind the scenes and getting people onto shows like that. So we'll come back to that a little bit later. I do have to ask, and I hope it's not a mistake to do so, is Jazzy a given name or a nickname?
It's a nickname, but I haven't gone by my full name, which is Jasmine, my government name, since, gosh, I was like 10. So like, it's kind of, it's been my name forever. And I actually thought about changing my name to Jazzy, like legally, but I just never actually ended up doing it. So it's okay.
So you got that nickname as a girl. Was it because of music or dancing or both?
I danced. I did dance. Yeah. I danced for, gosh, about 15, 16 years, and I was competitive dancing. So I was traveling across the country doing jazz, tap, lyrical, ballet, just about everything you can name it. And Jazzy kind of just fit.
Oh, cool. Well, cool. Well, I guess not a mistake to ask then. I guess that worked out okay.
No, that was not a mistake.
Okay. So on the topic of mistakes, though, I know you're prepared to answer the question we always start off with here, of the different things you've done professionally, Jazzy. What would you say is your favorite mistake?
My favorite mistake was me actually leaving the industry and trying something new for 6 months.
Yeah. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I started, I've been doing casting for well over 10 years by this point. And, things were slowing down in the industry. I was just having a kid and, a lot of things were going through my mind of like, what should I do next? I feel like I don't really have a upward trajectory that I was looking to find. I think it's because, I had that Emmy nomination. I was like, okay, well, we're fine. Like, there's nothing really more to this. So I tried something new by doing digital talent management. So I worked with a firm, and I thought it was very similar to casting in that you were working with talent here in and day out, but it's a little bit different in that you're actually managing their career. Working with digital creators is a completely different beast. It's, making sure people are hitting, all of their deadlines when it comes to a lot of their, videos that they're doing. A lot of the people that I were working with was TikTok influencers. So it was overall a very interesting world to be in. But then I realized while I was there this was not my space. It was not something that I ever saw myself ever trying or doing. And I actually learned that, I don't actually work really well in a space that is so strict. And the thing about casting, you have a lot more fluidity, and there's none of that in management side. It's either, do or die, you're making mistakes, then you're out. And that was not the world I ever wanted to live in. So it was a mistake for me to leave the industry for a little bit. I had to build back up all of my contacts because they all thought I was done. And now, I came back and I'm doing better than ever, but it took a minute.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I'm glad to hear, the kind of the end the end for now, the end of the story for now of things going well. But yeah, gosh, there's I think a lot we could dig into though. I appreciate
Yeah.
you telling the story there. Tell us a little bit. I'm curious because look, I'm an engineer from the Midwest. You're working in the entertainment industry in LA. Very different worlds. Like I don't know the entertainment world. And like to me, the word casting, I mean, this is going to be a really nerdy technical thing. Like casting is like making metal parts of like, pouring molten metal.
Yes. Yeah.
A totally different thing, right? So you might ask, well, how does anyone get into that as a career? How does one get into casting in the entertainment industry? Like, do you start off wanting to be in front of the camera? You talk about being a performer, or how do you get into that?
Well, my story is a lot different from most other people's stories. I thought I wanted to be a producer, so I was already working on set, and I was working on a commercial. And then I realized I hate being on set. I hate being there for 12 hours, 14-hour days on my feet. And then afterwards, I went in for a office PA position, so production assistant position. And it turns out that, that ended up getting taken. I didn't have that as an opportunity for me to get that job. But they said, hey, do you have any interest in doing casting? And I was like, sure, I need a job. So I took it. Yeah. And casting assistant was like my first step into casting, and I absolutely loved it. And that's why I'm still here today. But I do know that, there's two different ways for casting. And I think people need to know that. Like, there's obviously the scripted side of it, or you can do the unscripted side. So I predominantly work on the unscripted side.
Okay. So we'll come back and explore how some of that works and what you experienced and went through there. So you mentioned like looking for an upward trajectory. You went from being a casting assistant to, I guess you work in casting. CSA is a casting society.
Casting Society of America, yeah. Right. So that's like a collective of casting directors and associates and producers Yeah.
So then, I mean, there like reading about some of your experiences. Again, we'll come back to this more. I think with the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, there is like a casting director. I guess the casting people report up to is casting director kind of then like the top of the food chain, I guess, in that profession.
Yeah, correct. So you have the casting director. Underneath that, you have a casting producer, you have an associate, and then you have an assistant. And that's usually how it works for the unscripted side.
So I guess, trajectories could be moving up to bigger, more successful shows or award winning. And then maybe do people ever move then from casting into other producer type roles if they're looking to do something different?
Yeah, I think, you can cap out a casting director if you want to do casting, but you have the ability to, be in-house somewhere. So you can work at a production company, or you can work directly with network as, VP of talent. That would be an upward trajectory, but those are very few and far between. Yeah. Or you can have your own company. Those are so far, that's basically the upward trajectory. But some people also move into the development side where they'll develop their own shows, they'll cast their own shows, and then they'll sell it, which is kind of what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So then, like, how far into that digital talent management job did you start at least having an inkling of like, oh, maybe this is a mistake, right? Because that can be hard to admit. Or do you think like, do I need to stick with it?
Yeah.
When do you decide? Can you tell us about some of that thought process?
Yeah, I would say it was about 3 months in, I realized it wasn't for me. The culture was not my favorite. It was very frat bro culture is the best way to put it. Yeah. It was run by two men, and they weren't really open to having a lot more opinions in the room. And as someone as very outspoken as myself, that obviously I butt heads very easily with that. But then I also realized there wasn't an upward trajectory there either. When you're a talent manager, you're just a talent manager and you just have larger clients and that's it. So right then and there, I was like, okay, I'm in the same boat that I thought I was getting out of. So why did I do that? Why did I jump ship?
So there's that cultural, similar cultural dynamic. And I mean, when you say frat bro, I hear white. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
It was, yeah.
probably everybody else was too, but just to confirm or check that. So I'm curious, like, were you working with, digital talent, people who are Black, people of color? Was that something that you were kind of looking to help, work with talent where you could, try to help create better opportunities for them, or you kind of work with who you get assigned to?
Yeah, when I first got there, I had the ability to just basically take over a roster that they gave to me. It was relatively diverse, but I wanted to add to it. So that's what I did. I started adding more creators that normally wouldn't get the opportunity. And I think the thing with digital creator, it's such a new like atmosphere that people don't really understand, and management can end up being really rough, and people have seen bad managers, people are taking advantage of them. So I didn't want to be that person. I wanted to make sure that I can get them to, their North Star or whatever that may be. And I didn't have the, building blocks with the company that I was with to be able to build this career into what I want them to have. And, that's where it all starts. If, it all crumbles out in the beginning, how are you going to make it any further than that?
Yeah. Now, it's something like, TikTok or YouTube that's more, social media or organic, or how does somebody get a following or go viral? I mean, casting or traditional entertainment industry has different gatekeepers,
Right.
but with newer digital media, is there less of that gatekeeper function where more diversity can shine through, where diverse talent can find bigger audiences, or does some of the deal making of, like, I don't know, sponsorships or different partnerships still kind of hold some people back where there's inequities?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot more diversity and with issues when it comes to partnerships. So like, we had some great talent, non-binary folks, that were Black, that never had the same opportunities as the white female that was just pushing beauty product. And she was doing the same thing that they were doing. So you could definitely see that in the partnerships. But as for, virality and getting, famous that way, you still have the access to do it. The platform still provides that for you. It's just the actual companies that are coming through and paying these creators.
Yeah. So on that talent management side, I mean, was that kind of a parallel to kind of traditional, you think of, agencies in Hollywood, like, the big ones, CAA, if they're big, if someone like me has heard of
I mean, that is one of the biggest. So you got
one of
it.
the firms. But I mean, is it so that was, but is some of that just, you say it's very new, like, is it still kind of sorting out if, like, newer players in talent management will, sort of dominate that new space, or, I wonder if some of the more legacy firms start coming in?
I think there's going to be maybe like 2 to 3 boutique agencies that get to the point of like the CAAs. There's a company, Waylar, that they're ahead of the curve the way they are working. They're implementing new tech, they're bringing in partners. Like, if you see that in a boutique, like, you see that they're going to succeed in the future. But smaller companies where they're not getting up as fast as running, and kind of just taking in as many creators as they possibly can just to say that they have these people on their roster rather than actually servicing them, they're going to end up dying out, because all of those creators are going to realize, I'm not getting anything from this management company. I might as well go to the A3s, the CAAs, it doesn't make sense for them.
Yeah. So maybe one other question, kind of about your story that you shared with us, before we move on. Like, it seems like there's this question of, was it a mistake to leave casting? Was it a mistake to go into the digital talent management? And then maybe tell us a little bit more about kind of decision points of trying to go back into casting and get back in somewhere, and where was that? Or, other possibilities. Was there a door number 3 that you were maybe thinking about?
Yeah, it was, when I had the ability to go, I'm done with this, and I ended up leaving. It was a weird situation for me, in that, like, I felt like I was giving up and wasn't trying hard enough, because I'm one of those people that are like, I'm gonna ride this out into the end, and even if it doesn't end up anywhere, like I hope, I get something out of it. But I knew it wasn't servicing me anymore, so it was time for me to move on. And making that decision was tough, sending in a letter of resignation. It was just very formal, that I'm not used to that kind of, environment. So me moving and leaving was, obviously one of the best decisions, but I learned so much. I learned so much about, content creation. I learned about how managers work on that side. It's a little bit different than traditional media. But I also have so much respect for these content creators that I didn't have before. They are working their butts off. Like, they are producing, they are editing, they are filming it, they are directing it, and then they're putting it online for these people to watch. And they're pumping out content a lot faster than anyone in traditional media could ever do.
Yeah.
So that is something that I learned from that. And, I don't look at that as a regret. That's why it's a, favorite mistake.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now, getting back into casting, I had to reach out to all my contacts and be like, hey, I'm back if you need me. I basically rebranded myself, and, I have my own company with my husband called Force Perspective. And we spent time really developing shows for, underrepresented content creators, also, developing new formats. But we also spend time casting, and that's stuff that I love to do. I'm doing some, digital branding, but I'm also doing some, unscripted stuff. So with all of that said, I was able to kind of diversify who I was and create, a better thing out of it, which is pretty great.
Well, and that is great, and that's what the show is all about. Like, I wouldn't want to do a show called My Biggest Regret. Like, that would be sad, right? So, but yeah, I'm glad there was some learning, and that you were able to bounce back, and that the industry didn't slam a door on you because you had walked away. But maybe that's transition point to, I don't know, would an industry slam a door on you because you write, say, an open letter criticizing or challenging things that need to be challenged? Could you tell us some of that story about your time with the Bachelor franchise and departing and writing that letter? And just real quick before you get into that, was that the last casting role before you went into digital talent management?
No.
Okay. So can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah. So when I first started working at The Bachelor, it was, rose-colored glasses. I was very excited to be able to work on such a huge franchise. I was brought on for Rachel Lindsay's season. So that alone, I was really excited because it was the first Black Bachelorette. So I was like, finally, we get to see something that we haven't seen before, and I have the ability to work on it. That season went over really well. I didn't have really any issues within, the staff or just how we were casting. And then I started to see things change about, the next season and the season afterwards. I was noticing that, we were only casting a certain type of women. We wouldn't see women, especially Black women, unless they had straightened hair or they had weaves in. And that was something that I would constantly bring up, is like, why can't we see this one girl that has natural hair? Why can't we see? And they would just say it wasn't the Bachelor look. And when I first heard of what the Bachelor look was, I took a moment to myself and I was like, what is that supposed to mean? And then, put two and two together, it's not white enough. And that alone really did not sit well with me. Casting a show like that, just any dating show, can wear on someone, because you're literally spending all of that time just looking at what people look like. And that is tough for just and at that time I was in like my early 20s. So that's really that was a tough moment for me. But I moved on. I continued to speak up, and I was hit with a lot of microaggressions in the office. I was made fun of for what I was wearing. Someone told me that they wanted to dress like me for Halloween.
Oh boy.
So it was getting to the point where I was like, I need to remove myself from the situation until it's going to get bad. It's going to get really bad. So I left, And it was roughly about 3 years afterwards when they announced Matt James as the next Bachelor. And if you don't watch The Bachelor, Matt James was the first Black Bachelor, which is huge. And I was absolutely terrified to hear that they were going to do that, because if they were doing that to me behind closed doors, what are they going to do to him on a national stage? They already embarrassed Rachel Lindsay with Lee, which was horrible. So
what happened then? What
yeah,
Rachel, what was
yeah. So Rachel Lindsay had a guy named Lee on the season who came from a more of a racist background and was throwing a lot of racist things on TV for everyone to see, which obviously embarrassed Rachel. So if that's how they handled it the first time, how are they going to handle it when they have a Black Bachelor?
So real quick on that though, I'm curious, because the one thing I talked about with Zach Waddell, episode 214, he was on The Bachelorette years before you were involved with the show, like this question of casting, you mentioned for appearance. I may imagine a picture, still photos, some of the first screening, but then there's a question of personality. And I mean, I'm asking you to guess, and maybe that's a mistake, but like, are they trying to find people who would be a good fit for Rachel, or are they looking for controversial characters, even if it's really racist and inappropriate in someone's case?
I think every show always wants to have the quote unquote villain, or just someone that will shake things up. In this scenario right here, I think this is the prime example of how casting can go wrong by spending time actually getting people that would be a good fit for her, but also thinking that race is funny. And that's where it all went wrong, because this could have been the opportunity to have a really poignant and amazing conversation about race and how it is to date interracially, or just, to just Black love. And they didn't do that. Instead, they made a mockery of it.
And were you the only Black staff member from the show? Yeah.
I was the only Black casting producer in that office.
Yeah.
There were other Black folks that were in, the editing side, production side. There's actually one in the EP level, but I was the only one on the casting team.
Yeah. But I guess there's a lesson there. Even if you're trying to put together a diverse cast, the producers, I mean, they really do a lot to help kind of move things along, and whether it's, final decisions on choosing cast members, or the things they do to maybe kind of stir up quote unquote reality within the show. It goes to show how the makeup, I mean, this would be the true for maybe the same thing with any big company. If the board of directors is not very diverse, they're going to have trouble relating to a diverse customer base and steering the company in a direction. Similar thing, I'm guessing, with a TV show.
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's really important, which is something that I do, is I make sure my teams are fully diverse when I'm casting, because you're going to have a much different experience than I'm going to have as a different experience. And we want to make sure we see all of that on TV. Yeah. And I think that's where The Bachelor was falling short.
Yeah. So I kind of interrupted your story. Try to let you get back into it. I'm curious then, like some of the thought process that led to writing the letter, and the letter is available online. I can link to it, but if you can kind of give some highlights of the letter, and then I guess the associated question is like, how much did you debate? Like, is it a mistake to send this out or not, in terms of the reaction you would get, the impact it would have on the industry or your own career?
When I wrote that was when Matt James was announced as the Bachelor. I wrote from my feelings, based on my experiences, but also a call to action. I knew that they needed to change, and that was the only way that we were going to move forward. So I wrote it up just like on my like notes app on my phone. And then I had my husband read it, and I was like, do I post this? Is this something that I want to do? And he's like, just go for it. Like,
It's
I'm
like,
sure like 5 people will see it.
yeah. Well, you might think, does it go too far? Does it not go enough? Or does it not go far enough?
Yeah, a lot of back and forth with that. And then I ended up posting it on my Instagram, which also then posted to my Facebook. Lo and behold, I had reporters following me, and I didn't know that, so they picked it up. And then it kind of just went wild. But once I started getting emails from like different news sources and all this stuff, I was like, oh no, did I just make a horrible mistake by posting about this? Because you never know what's going to happen with the news. Are they going to completely turn it? Will I have the opportunity to actually speak? So then I was like, okay, well, we're just going to go for it. We're going to see what's going to happen. This is my chance to speak my mind. And I spoke my mind. I was hit with some trolls, which is expected. But for the most part, everyone was really, really receptive to everything that I said. And I had other people come forward too and share their stories while they were there. So it ended up starting a conversation, I think, especially within like the casting community and also production, and like, what can we do to move forward?
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, yeah, you bring up topics like this, and there's people that are going to come and just attack you. And I'm not looking to hear details. I'm sure some of the trolling it's really ugly, but it sounds like beyond. I mean, that's got to be easier said than done. Of basically like ignore the trolls or don't feed the trolls, to focus on what you were really trying to influence or who you were trying to influence.
Right. I mean, the trolls are trolls. Like most of it was about like, not everything is about race, is usually what most of them were saying. And it's not about that. It's just about love. And I was just like, do you hear yourself? Like, at the end of the day, the people that want the love are not being represented.
Right.
So, I just ignored that I actually left them there. I didn't delete anything. I feel like, that was a moment in time. It was kind of like a snapshot in history. So it's weird to delete it.
Yeah. So then I remember, I'll link to it, I think in the show notes, there was a deadline.com article that printed the full letter as you had written it. And then there were some responses from, a couple of the shows. And I mean, like, I don't know, to me, it sounded like lip service of just like, okay, we're going to put out a statement. We're fully committed to diversity and blah, blah, blah. But okay, but so what? What was your reaction to their reaction? And am I mischaracterizing it from a kind of quick review of it?
No, it's all good. It was a Band-Aid. They just put it on there, they slapped it on there, and they said, that's fine. We'll deal with it at another point. We have other things. We have other big fish to fry, is what I felt. I did end up having a meeting with, the production company, and we talked things out and about my experience there. I don't know if it ever turned into anything internally, because obviously I'm not there, so I don't know. But, I told them my experiences there and how, as a Black woman, I shouldn't feel like that I am walking into a battlefield just by going into work every day. So, yeah.
Wow. The show Love Island, like, I've barely heard of that show. Would you describe that, quote unquote, dating?
It's definitely a dating show.
How's the dynamic, on that show in terms of diversity and representation behind the scenes and in front of the camera?
Yeah, overall a lot more diverse with the cast, and at least the season that I worked on. Definitely a lot more diverse with the cast, the production team. It was a lot more inclusive. It was a lot of fun. The show is, a whole bunch of people just dating to date rather than dating for love and like falling in love and getting married. Which is sometimes nice to just turn your brain off TV. So that that's Love Island for you.
Yeah. Well, so my wife has been from the beginning a huge fan of The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. She describes it the same way. It's you kind of turn off your brain TV. She's not into sports. So like there's there's some parallels to football.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause I mean, I'm kind of watching football to zone out, and then you get into like the playoffs in a Final Four, and the I mean,
Exactly.
there's like the final show of a season. That's like the Super Bowl.
Exactly. That's a fantastic analogy.
So, but since she watches it, that means I often get exposed to it. Like unless I want to leave and go to another room and watch something different. I try giving it a chance, and some seasons I get drawn in more than others. It's very intermittent. But like one thing, and I think you talked about this in the letter of the casting of a token Black person, a token Asian person, and as a viewer, somewhat viewer of the show, it seems like that, or it comes across that way. And then it kind of makes you think of like, well, how does someone feel? Kind of are they just happy for the opportunity to be on the show, even if I don't know if people come into it with the same sort of hope or expectations, or if they come into it saying like, well, I might be a token representative of this group, but at least I'm here.
Yeah. Oof, that sounds brutal when you say it that way.
Sorry.
I mean, I like, especially the season that I work on, I felt like we were filling a quota rather than filling, the people that deserve to be on the show, and making sure that we can fully have a very like diverse group of
Mhm.
people. Having, the quote unquote token person, like the one Asian person or the one Black person, really doesn't give you like the diaspora of what people are,
Right.
and especially within that community.
Mhm.
And that's really what was really frustrating for me, because it was like, okay, you're going to have the one Black girl there, and then she's going to have straight hair, she's going to be incredibly stick thin. Not everyone looks like that. And
Right.
same thing with an Asian woman, or Latina woman. Like, you can't do that. And that's I think every casting team, needs to take a good look at themselves before they cast a show. And like, if they have the full team, everyone laid out in front of them, can you say that you have a big, diverse cast in front of you that you are proud of? Or are you just succumbing to the easy thing where it's like, let's just put like 10 white people on because we
Right.
know that they're going to be accepted?
And there's got to be a really tough dynamic of, you're looking for contestants who, I don't know if you can even ask of like, are you open to interracial dating? Because imagine what you don't want is a white bachelor in the first round sending home all the women of color.
Exactly.
And it almost seems
Exactly.
like though that there's pressure. This is one you wonder what are producers doing? Like you've got to keep. It's not even just like token entry into the show, but is it token survival? It looks
Yeah.
bad if you send all the Black women home. Don't do that.
Right. Right, right. I don't know exactly what happens behind the scenes with the producers and how they make sure that they have the diversity within it, but I'm sure they're talking to the Bachelor and asking like, who are you interested in? And then, mixing and doing what they need to do. But
Yeah.
that wouldn't happen if you have a very large cast of people that are very different from one another,
Yeah.
and you won't feel like you have to separate and be like, oh, actually I don't want any of these types of people. I can have a
Mhm.
whole mixture, because you have no choice but to have that
Yeah.
mixture.
Yeah. So maybe a final question. I'm not going to try not to ask another question that sounds harsh. And but the timing of when I'm realizing you had already left the show, the timing of when Matt James was announced as the first Black Bachelor, was that, and that was in the pretty immediate aftermath of George Floyd's murder.
Yeah, it was in 2020.
Was I like, I'm just curious the dynamic between, okay, finally, it's about time versus that seems like kind of a cynical time to do it.
Yeah, that was definitely my thought at first. Was, are you just doing it to do it because you feel like you have to? Because what took you so long? How many seasons of The Bachelor have there been already where a lot of these guys look exactly the same? So a lot of that went through my head. I know it's went through a lot of other casting people's heads, and producers were all like, but But at the same time, you want to celebrate it. You want to go, okay, yes, we finally have a Black Bachelor. How are they going to handle it?
Yeah.
And overall, I think they did okay. I think there were some times that they could have done it better. Especially, having the conversation with his father, and it felt like this stereotypical like dad that is never there, the Black father. And that was a conversation that was not great. And then they also had, Matt and the host Chris Harrison having the conversation about race in the beginning, and it felt like out of place, because I was like, should a white guy be having this conversation with Matt James? But they tried, and I understand that they were trying, and we can only go from there.
Yeah. Well, we've been joined today again by Jazzy Collins, and one other. I know you've done a lot of other things in your career. I'm sorry to
it's all good.
fixate on The Bachelor, but you talk about other dimensions here. Age, like, would you have wanted to work on quote unquote the Golden Bachelor? Now that they have, how old is he? He's like 60.
I think he's 75.
He's 75.
I'm pretty sure he's in his 70s. Yeah.
Would you have wanted to work on that? I wonder how that's going.
Well, I know it's fully cast. I think they're going to air it, I think, in like the next week or so. But I look back at it and I go, would I have? And honestly, no. I think the Bachelor chapter has closed for me.
Sure. Sure.
I think the format is a little tired, and I would like to work on something new and fresh and fun.
And that's part of why I fade out on. I'm like, oh, okay. I know the dynamics are very, very similar, it seems, from season to season. So let's talk about, final question. What are you working on next? Like, what are you working on creating that's new and fresh?
Yeah, I have a couple of fun stuff. So I have some food formats that we're currently taking out to pitch. So some like food shows. We also have kind of a fun take on there's an LGBTQ plus side with Yama Fix My Life, so it's a little fun format with that. We also have a slate of 3 underrepresented directors for features that we're also taking out, and I'm about to start casting a new project the next couple of weeks, so if you're a Traders fan, it's very much in the vein of that. So I'm doing a lot. Having a lot of fun.
Yeah. If somebody is looking to get cast on an unscripted program, and I imagine if if the writer's strike continues, there's probably going to be more and more unscripted. What advice or where how does somebody even try to get into the fold of the casting decisions?
Yeah, so if you are interested in being on any reality show, it's always great to start with one unscripted casting director on Instagram. We post all of our social media stuff there. We post all of our Instagram flyers. We post other friends' flyers, and then you can add another Instagram. So, you can follow me, Jazzy Casting, on Instagram, and then literally all of my friends that I follow are also people that work in casting. So you can just click through them and you can find a show, whether it's Survivor, to The Circle, to maybe the new show I'm working on.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you. And I'm not asking, I don't think that's not in my future, but somebody listening.
You never know. You never know. Because I got Lee on the show for The Circle, and that's not something that you expect, to see on The Circle.
Well, pun or corny phrase alert. I'm going to paraphrase one of the famous Bachelor catchphrases and say this has been the most jazzy episode ever.
I love it. I'm a fan.
Not the most dramatic episode ever. Well, no, the most dramatic season. No, so okay. Yeah, did my best to modify.
You did a good job.
All right. Well, you got to make a mistake or two.
We all got to make a mistake to get to where we are today. So I'm all about them.
Yeah. Well, Jazzy, thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate hearing the different aspects of those decisions that you made, and setting a good example of we can bounce back from a mistake. So thank you for sharing all of that today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
All right, thanks.